welcome to my view from the piano bench. Now we're 2 weeks into this new series, a continuation of Inside the Process, which you may have followed on another YouTube channel or on my Facebook page. But now we're here on my Joe Holt's Notes YouTube channel every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. And I'm going to draw back the curtain and try to share some of the things that I think about and that guide me. And I tend to get kind of esoteric. Today is certainly going to be one of those days. And hopefully this is applicable to you whether you are a musician or not, or at least I hope you will find it interesting. Thank you for all of you who provide support and encouragement via the link to my website support page. You'll find options there. And if there is any modest amount that you would be comfortable with, that's very helpful. I don't need much, just the encouragement to keep going forward. And again, thank you to all of you who do provide that. And most of all, thank you for being here. So, what I have titled this is not on my page, but here it is. The key to everything. And before I get to that word, it's going to wind up being two words. There's a word that comes first. It's not my final answer, but it is necessary. And that word is discipline. Stay the course. Follow the yellow brick road. Use your, if I only, well. if I only had I might be able to control what goes on here when it gets all out of my control. But actually, no, I wouldn't want that. Even when I am ridiculous. Maybe that's part of the charm, if there is such a thing. So, discipline becomes, and I should say, I'm talking about my own process, my view from the piano bench. So, I'm not dictating whatsoever how any individual should do anything, particularly make music. In fact, I'm pretty adamant, as many of you I'm sure know, that this is an individual pursuit and we all find our own way. And I love being in the position of being a coach. Teacher would be a synonym, but not really. Even when I'm in a teaching situation, my objective is really to help the person find their path, their way. And a lot of me finding my path and my way was by butting into and butting heads with people who were insisting on alternative ways or their way or prioritizing one over the other, and we are all uniquely ourselves. So I'm speaking about myself, and discipline becomes for me the structure where things can be discovered once I let go of them. Now, what does that mean? Well, I'm going to let that sit there, and it's kind of part of, or the crux of, what I intend to talk about. And when I conceived of this topic tonight, the word discipline was not in my head. But when I started writing, I realized that discipline is necessary to create the path, to find those things, to get to that fork in the road that I'll speak of, and to have learned things enough to take the right fork and go the right way. So those of you who know me, particularly from Facebook, and who know me personally, and I'm sorry, my thoughts are spinning and I'm probably taking 4 minutes for every sentence, and I don't mean to bore you. But one of the little discovery times in my life that I went through, and it's going on 10 years ago now, maybe 8 years ago or so, I began exploring the landscape, the internal and eternal landscape, all of that connected, by taking very long walks. And uncharacteristic of me, very uncharacteristic. I would be up before sunrise most every morning. And I lived a mile from a bridge that goes over the Chester River by the town of Chestertown. And most mornings I was on that bridge, kind of famously to the locals, taking sunrise pictures, but often also out there in the evening taking sunset pictures. And I would walk for miles and miles, a lot of contemplating, a lot of just heart space opening, and using those pictures to be picture taking. I'm not a photographer, but just to begin to learn the idea of like feeling my way through and moving from here to here, which is kind of the crux. And when I was doing that, a friend of mine made a comment on Facebook, and we know each other pretty well, and we know we're very different. And he's very structured, and he's very into, his procedures and his thought processes, and that works for him differently for me. So when he wrote 2 words in his comment, he said, impressive discipline. I'm like, whoa. Well, coming from somebody who is impressively disciplined, that was cool. And it's like, I never really considered myself impressively disciplined or just disciplined at all. But actually, yes, in the pursuit of the larger thing. When it becomes discipline for discipline's sake, then I can get into trouble. And those pictures, if you remember them, and I used to post several daily, and I would come up with captions for them and sayings and stuff, and it just became a thing. And like, oh, look, you're a photographer now. No, I never was a photographer. This is a phase that will go away. I started with my 8-megapixel camera phone, and could have just stayed there and it would have been fine. But sunrises and sunsets, that was the thing for a few years. Little sunrise, sunset. And as always, I realized I forgot one little thing. Actually, I forgot several things. I'm always forgetting several things. But I wouldn't be me if I didn't. So, last night, I was looking at disciplines at home that I'm trying to manage. One of them is studying. This is a topic for another time, and I have talked about this in the previous series. I kind of like fell through a side window of the House of Music Therapy in 1997 as far as getting credentialed. And it's actually a really important part of my outlook and a part of my life. I'm not practicing at this point as a music therapist, but it all connects to my understanding and purpose of what music is about. And I got way behind in my continuing education credits. So I have the last year of the 5-year cycle, which is this year, 2022, to complete most of my credits, which I do at home. So up that discipline, but I can do it. So the studying discipline is one that I'm working with, and the writing discipline. I think I've mentioned to many of you that I have an eventual goal to write a book. I have actually started trying to write books on things, and excuse me, if one gets written, it's going to be the one titled Everything I Ever Needed to Know in Life I Learned at the Piano, because that is really, really true. Yeah, I tried to write a book on the ideas and the understandings I got when I was last on staff in church ministry. And the mistake I think a lot of churches were making in their music and the thing they were leaving out. But, you know, part of my problem is that I always feel I have things I need to say. And I don't know if that's the best idea or not. But before I get there, in fact, it's not the best idea. Again, disciplines are important, and now I've realized that I need to keep this open because I put some lyrics up here, and I can find them. I think they're right where I didn't put them. Here they are, right here. All right. Just read a few lyrics of a tune from the 1940s. Would you like to swing on a star, carry moonbeams home in a jar, and be better off than you are? Or would you rather be a mule? A mule is an animal with long, funny ears, kicks up at anything he hears. His back is brawny, but his brain is weak. He's just plain stupid with a stubborn streak. And by the way, if you hate to go to school, you may grow up to be a mule. Or a pig is an animal with dirt in his face, blah, blah, blah. But if you don't care, a feather or a fig, you may grow up to be a pig. You know what? Disciplines are important. There we go. Disciplines are important. But as I kind of alluded to, part of the problem is that I have a lot to say. I have much to say. And I want to talk when really I just need to shut up and listen. Which is ironic But I guess what I mean is, if I shut up and listen, then I am connected to something deeper, something bigger, something where I'm just not stuck within myself when I do open my mouth. And honestly, that is the whole focus of me being at the piano. And I struggle with it all the time. All the time. I had a conversation with a student just today, and the progress that you make as a musician will inevitably lead you to, if not a point of despair, a point of, why aren't I getting anywhere? But actually, you are really getting somewhere. And the fact that you're asking yourself why I'm not getting anywhere is just evidence that you now realize a whole lot more than you did because you are better and you can see it, right? But we are always seeking to grow, and for me, seeking to get those roadblocks out of the way. When I was a young musician, a friend of mine would call me constipated often. Said I had to get rid of my constipation, and he didn't really have any clue as to how I would accomplish that. He thought he knew most everything. And I had to learn it on my own. It's a funny word for a constipation. And what it would be was that on a random occasion, I would have this like a deep kind of connection come out of me, and things would happen at the piano, and I'm looking at them and like, whoa, that's cool. And other people were thinking, oh, that's cool. And it happened a very small percentage of the time. But it would open up for like a minute, and then it would be gone. And then I would listen to the voices internally and externally saying, do that again. But when I start trying to say that again, it isn't there to be said. And then the more I try to talk, the more tangled up I get. Boy, that happens all the time when I talk. I should shut up and listen, huh? listen to the mockingbird. It's probably got something to say. Ever listen to people, and this is a struggle for me, and you think of that one thing that you want to say in response, even if you think it's like the right thing to say, and you're saying it for all the right reasons, but then, oh my goodness, you want to be able to remember it, because if you take your mind off of it, you're going to forget it. At least I will, because I'm not in that moment anymore, and that pulls me out of the listening moment. That's a frustrating fork in the road. And in that case, I would want to take Yogi Berra's advice if I could. Yogi Berra's advice, right? When you see a fork in the road, take it. So I want to get a piece of paper out, write down what I'm thinking about, so I don't have to think about it anymore, so I can listen. Some people find that rude. I find it rude that they find that rude. Anyway, I don't think it's rude at all, any of it. So that fork in the road is the fork of talking and listening. And when I sit at the piano, especially first thing in the morning, the very first thing I do, I'm squarely at that fork. Another way to talk about that, rather than talking and listening, is thinking versus being thoughtful. Thinking versus thoughtful and contemplative. Working it through, being open to discover. Kind of a similar thing, talking and listening. And that's the biggest reason I spend so much time here at my piano. And truly, everything I need to know, not just to play the piano, but in life, I've worked out here. I sang this to a friend, to Sharon, who teaches voice. I teach piano, and Sharon Sable, the wonderful vocalist I'm doing the Blossom Dearie tribute project with. And I mentioned, when I speak to students describing, things that I have worked out intuitively. In other words, that I wasn't taught by a process, because that's not how I learned. I wind up teaching myself. And she completely agreed, and I knew she would understand. So everything I need to know, but not just in piano, in life, I work out here. I've discovered here. And when I thought of the word, key to everything, I realized there are actually two words. The first word that I was going to say is patience. And I was going to leave it there. Patience is the key to everything. To wait. To be willing to wait. But there's actually another word that's vital, which is trust. Patient trust. So when I sit at the piano in the morning and I'm staring at that fork in the road, that fork of thinking versus thoughtful, or mind versus heart, then I wait. If it takes forever, I will wait for you. Well, it doesn't take forever. It can certainly feel like forever. But in terms of the thinking or overthinking, I bought a couple of refrigerator magnets about overthinking. I forget what it said, but I had to buy it for myself. The thoughts are going through my head as I'm playing this, and it's very important actually for me to say this. I do not claim to be a successful practitioner of any of the things that I talk about, and especially this. I can only claim to be a searching student, and I'm sharing those things with you. It was like when I was taking those pictures, walking the Chester River Bridge, and everybody's calling me a photographer, and I'm like, no. These are just explorations I'm making, and I'm choosing to share them. I'm choosing to put them on Facebook. They're going to stop someday. Oh, no, they're not. You're a photographer. No, they will. They're going to stop, and I'm going to move on to other explorations. And you hope you're doing the right thing by sharing, and you hope you're doing it for the right motives. And part of the frustration is that right now, my thoughts are kind of getting in the way when I'm playing, and I'm having some breakthrough, and it's not horrible, but you also know what it could be, and it usually isn't, but you have those moments. And then with the student I was referencing, there was one moment she referenced where it's like it felt and sounded so good, and it was just a brief thing, but there was this realization of that breakthrough of that thing, like how did that happen? And yes, but then of course what that does is, and when that can't be attained, 10 seconds later, then despair comes. It's like, but I guess I'm really not good after all, but of course it's so easy to go the wrong way and get your ego involved and think that you're, it's not about being good. It's about making the connection and growing. That's the two-sided, double-edged sword, two-sided coin of releasing recordings. And I've released a bunch of recordings now over the last 20 years or so. Actually, no. Oh my goodness, 35 years. What am I thinking? I forgot about cassette tapes. And, it's typical that, 5 minutes or 5 months or 5 years or 5 seconds after you release something, you hate it because you've grown past that, but those recordings are a marker. You can see your growth. But then there are a few recordings, a few tracks from recordings long ago that I think kind of still hold up. And I guess those were the ones that I was able to get out of the way and just be able to most completely say what I was able to say at the time. Because it's not about showing off what you know, it's about connecting with what you have. And there's a line I should have written down. So somebody remind me I said it. It's not about showing off what you know, it's about connecting with what you have. In fact, anybody out there who has my cell phone number, text it to me. It's not about showing off what you know. It's about connecting with what you have. I keep saying it over and over because I don't want to take the time to write it down, but I could have written it down faster than saying it 46 times. So, sorry about that. So, that fork in the road, which I encounter pretty much every time I play, and I try to come to the piano open, and sometimes more open than others. But that fork in the road is the desire to make something happen. What do you do with that desire? You try. But really what you need to do is you need to fall back on the disciplines you've practiced that get you to the point where you can speak from the deeper place, from your intuition. Now, I will say there is now, for everything I'm going to say after this, a considerable disagreement among artists. lot of controversy about this. I feel very strongly about it, but I know that it's for me. And I do try to persuade people or present to people that this could be an option for them, if they see it as such. But there's a whole intellectual side to music. And in my music therapy little course discipline, now we're talking about relativist expressionism. I forget that we're just reading about it last night. But it's about this whole idea about what defines music. Is the music defined by what it portrays? Is the music defined by what it is? And it's all of that stuff. So I need to again qualify. This is my personal journey for almost all of my life of just this discovery and appropriation and reconsideration and all of that. So in my 20s, when I took jazz lessons with a prominent area jazz educator, the only time I actually took jazz lessons, it was an interesting time, and I learned a lot of things. Much of what I learned, or at least a good part, I understood later wasn't applicable to me, not in the way it was being taught. And that was an interesting process. But he set me up with a question one day. He said, Joe, when you are playing and improvising and playing jazz, what percentage division would you think it is between intuition and intellect? You know, and you're thinking when he asked that question, 70-30, 50-50, 20-80, but there was going to be no right answer because it was a setup. Because whatever you answered, he would say 100% intellect and 100% intuition. And at this point, I would say, actually, no. I would say it's about, well, it is in the context of surrendering your intellect to your intuition. But his point was, what if it's not happening for you? What if it's, and because I struggle with that. What if it's not happening? What if you're not feeling it? Then you have to rely on what you know. You basically have to go back to your processes. When I go to my thought processes, I fall in a hole. And I can move around, but a hole is kind of confining and I can't get very far. If I can't connect fully to my intuition, but I don't fall in the hole, maybe I stumble around, right? Maybe I don't entirely land on my feet. Maybe I walk sideways. Maybe I walk in circles. But I cover more territory than I do when I'm in a hole. And I know this, I believe this firmly, that if I'm only still for just that, I can't even measure the amount of time. Wait. It's just a second longer than you're willing to wait. Once you can detach from your thoughts, it's right there. It's kind of like the opposite of whoever it was, whatever wealthy families, when somebody's talking about it. How much money is enough? He says just a little bit more. How much waiting is enough? Just a little bit more. Oops, I didn't. I fell in the hole. It's happening to me all the time. So what did I write here? That I would say surrendering intellect to intuition, even when the intuition doesn't seem to be there. I'm not saying don't be involved. I'm saying be the vessel, release to it. Set that as a goal. Learn to do it. And even if that's not your process, to the extent, just like that, put the jigsaw puzzle together thing is not my process. I practice that all the time by working on classical music. And that becomes part of my intuitive vocabulary over time. So we should all be practicing and learning not just to our strengths, but to our weaknesses, right? So when I say be the vessel, then I want to play a hymn. It's a little Irish hymn that I'll play from time to time. Be Thou My Vision. comes from beyond me, whatever that means. And I come back to that one time I was watching a video of Keith Jarrett on YouTube and watching it over and over and over again and realizing what was happening. He was letting it go through him, connecting to it. So, you can say that I'm talking about being guided or surrendering to higher intelligence or intuition or God. But whatever you see it as, it's something that you have to be still to find. Not physical stillness so much. I'm not good at that at all. But in internal stillness and the stilling of the mind. And that requires patience and ultimately trust. And it dawned on me a couple of years ago that the idea of trusting intuition is something that everybody acknowledges in some way, where they're going to say, I should have trusted my gut, but no, I overthought it and it turned out wrong. And everybody does that, right? Everybody like, I got it. No, I think I need to do this. And then it's like, I should have done that. We've all had those moments. We all kind of understand at a basic level that when your gut is speaking to you, when you are in that different place, that should be trusted 100% of the time. And when you are there and you realize that you should trust your intuition, that's like the most basic expression of faith. It doesn't require defining where the intuition comes from or how the intuition works or the mechanisms of the intuition. It doesn't require understanding. It doesn't require thought. It just requires trust. Patient trust. So the very basic definition of faith, I think, is right there. And when you, okay, that's what I was going to say. I'm sorry. So when I made the decision a couple of years ago, actually 2.5, almost 3 years ago now, that I needed to suspend Mainstay Mondays, that I was burning out and I was done. But I had to give a year's notice because I was booked up for a year. It came to me like that. It came to me like knocked me over, and I was at the Mainstay. And I mean, I was sort of propelled into it by a certain circumstance, but it put me right there. And it's like, all right, I know this now. I know this. Bang. And I acted on it. I trusted it. And the thing about trusting your intuition doesn't give you details. It doesn't answer questions. It doesn't tell us about the circumstances. It doesn't tell us why. It only calls us to trust, however we get there. And what I didn't understand was what I was actually seeing was the end of Mainstay Mondays having nothing to do with my circumstances, because the pandemic was coming and Mainstay Mondays were going to go away, or they were going to really retool, because we went for a long time. How long did we go with it? Well over a year and a half. And in fact, we never resumed weekly shows once they stopped for the pandemic, and I wasn't able to finish them weekly. And I'm willing to believe that without having any understanding at all about the pandemic, I saw it coming. But I saw it coming in the circumstance I was being led in. And I trusted it, and I went with it. And You're only going to go wrong once you start overthinking it and you feel like you've gone wrong. If you can stay the course with patient trust, you're okay, actually. When you second guess your intuition, you are right back where you started. And this is the part I forgot to read right now. Anxiety and worry come from our mind, come from our thoughts. Peace, insight, intuition come from someplace else. And in music, the anxiety and worry can be about like something that just happened. Oh, I just sucked. I just played that thing, which actually can be very freeing because it makes you want to forget about it all. Or the anxiety can be about some current or future circumstance. And I can do that to myself all the time. And when you second guess your intuition, you are right back in worry and anxiety, not patience and trusting. And then you reset. And Kenny Werner, in his book Effortless Mastery, which I would highly recommend, will say when you are practicing to the space, which is, let's just say, a way of describing kind of what I'm talking about in a general sense. You're practicing that patience when you can find that you're there and you feel yourself leave it, take your hand off the keys. Because you're training yourself to know and training yourself to discipline yourself to stop and wait till you find it again, which is in contrast to that 100% intuition intellect, in that like you can always fall back on your intuition. And in fact, I had a piano student years ago, a young student who had a very particular and somewhat challenging learning style, and was not really able to learn traditionally, but was brilliant and could improvise a storm, but wasn't able to really appropriate the structures with it. And so I had, my way of helping him, as he discovered things, to help put handles on the suitcase so he could lift it up again and things like that. And he had a talent show coming up at his school. And his mother, either in a private conversation or in an email exchange, but apart from the student, said, okay, when he plays in his talent show, I want you to give him some fallbacks. Give him some things to go in case that he blanks out or something. So he's just not out there, so he doesn't embarrass himself. And that set off little bells in my head. And I don't purpose to do this, but sometimes I will defy a parent in teaching their child. And I don't know if I told her no then or I told her later that I didn't, because that's actually going to be a guarantee that that you're not going to be in that open spot because you're thinking about your off ramp. You have to trust. So what I did instead with this student is I said, okay, a half hour before you have to leave for school, you're going to sit at the piano and you're going to open the space. You're going to do this and you're going to prep yourself and you're going to walk into school with that space opened up. And then when you sit down at that talent show, it's going to be there for you. He totally trusted that. So when I asked his mother, how did it go? And I may have the number wrong, but I don't think so. I went to the number smaller, so I know I'm not wrong. I think it was bigger than this. She said, he had to play 4 encores. And I'm like, yes, trust, patience, and trust. And because I skipped over my notes here, I have no idea where I was. But actually, I should kind of just be wrapping up. And here's where I can come in. So the piano is my main place to practice stillness and patience. And you can ask me, oh no, let me finish this. I learned to feel where that thought-driven or agenda-driven line is, and then I learned to stay on one side of it. And that's a continual learning process. And it will never be perfect, but you can always grow. And if you ask me, what is your specific path? What do you do? That's not the point right now. The point right now is to set just a larger thing of you are going for that place where you've learned enough, you've practiced enough, you've disciplined yourself, and there it is. And you know what? When it's there, enjoy the heck out of it. Because it's a wonderful experience that most people don't have, whether you're playing for people or not. And we don't have to be talking about music right now. I hope that those of you who are not musicians grasp what I'm saying too. So I'm going to play one more tune, and it's about letting go, and it's actually an original tune. I don't write tunes, but I wrote this one for my daughter. Oh my goodness, 20 years ago, because she was 9. She's 29 now. And it's on a recording I did called He's Stepping Out. And there's a whole history to that recording, which I won't give, other than to say that most of these songs were songs that I had that when I led a youth choir, a children's choir in church, and they were like Bible tunes and teaching tunes. So this comes from that side of the street. And if you want to hear the words, because I'm not going to sing them. In fact, I haven't tried to play this for the longest time, many years. I thought of it just before I turned the camera on, and I kind of sort of remember how to play it instrumentally. But search on YouTube. You don't need to use my name. You can, but you can just put He's Steppin' Out, which is the title of the CD. Come as a Child, which is the title of the song. And it's about letting go. It's about trust. So I would encourage you to look that up. And once this video is active on YouTube, I might remember to link that in the comments. And it would have been good if I thought of it before 5 minutes before I'm doing this so I could remember how it went. But yeah, I wrote that for Cherie. That He's Stepping Out is, I think, my only old recording. It's the recordings that you can listen to on Spotify or those music services. It's a little bit haphazard. I'm not the greatest administrator. It's most of the recent ones are you know, and only one of the old ones. He's Stepping Out was from 2002. But you can listen to that whole thing on streaming services if you want to. So I'm gonna leave it there with just an exhortation to just whatever you do, take the deep breath, get the thought out of your head, open it up, let it happen, and whatever happens, just rejoice in it. Easier said than done, I know. So shut up now, Joe, and I'll turn the camera off and play the piano some more. Just get back in my space. So, you know, I have to do this just like performing on a schedule, on a calendar. You can't always be in that spot, right? And so you just do the best you can. And I'm going to try to crank these out every week. And I hope you find them helpful, or at least not ridiculous. So, of course, I welcome comments and feedback. And thank you so much. See you tomorrow night for Inside the... No. For Piano for My Friends. That's it. And next week again for my view from the piano bench. I'll get this straight. No, I won't. See you later. Thanks.